All right. You can't hear me?
Yep.
Okay. All right, we gotta click on.
Don't click leave the meeting. Yeah.
Wait a minute. See if you can get it.
I don't know, it just disappeared.
Okay, there we go. Okay. So what we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to talk about, it's this time of year, right? We're going to talk about Christmas lights and how to shoot Christmas lights, and to follow it up. How many do you have signed up, Val?
6.
We have 6 already, and you said we have room for 10?
Yes.
Okay, so 6 have already signed up for the follow-up workshop that's happening Thursday. So the information is online and in your newsletter. So there's 4 seats, is that correct? Am I doing the math right? 6, 4, okay. 4 seats left. Val's trying to keep that small because the walkways are small, and she wants to give you a personalized attention once you get to the Christmas village. So if you're interested and you're out there in Zoom land, contact Val through her email address, and she will tell.
In the newsletter that Jay sent out today.
All right, it's on the newsletter that went out today. The notice that went out today from Jay. No, it's the Monday meeting notice that Jay sent out today. Yeah, okay.
Where he says read to the end.
And says read to the end. Yes, okay. So I'm really happy that Val's doing this for us again. It seems like this is her thing. Yeah, I think it's her thing. Yeah, Christmas is her thing. Yeah. And speaking of Christmas, this Saturday is our Santa shoot, correct? Okay. Okay. Those who are volunteering, wear your shirts and your badges and your elf ears, correct? All right. Do you have enough volunteers right now? We can always use more. Okay. So Kim's taking signups for volunteers. We do have a Santa, from what I understand.
Santa Glenn, yes.
This is Santa Glenn? Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, this weekend. Yeah. And then we have another follow-up the following Saturday too. So we can always use more volunteers, right? That is one of our bigger fundraisers of the year. And hopefully this year is going to be even bigger, correct? All right. So I don't have any other announcements, except if you haven't already, get your renewals and your membership in. Okay. We have a couple new members here and a visitor, so we have to behave ourselves. Yeah. Okay. We've already shown them that we don't. We have 40 some members renewed and a couple new members. So that's a good start. It's just a start though. Right. Next week is our board meeting. We're going to be preparing for our annual membership meeting, which is where we elect officers. We go over the plan for next year. We show you our budget and so forth, all that boring stuff. But the more important part is we have our sharing slideshow. So if you haven't already uploaded your images for the slideshow, this Friday midnight is the deadline, and all that information is also in your newsletter. All right. So I'm going to shut up now, and Jay is going to take over the show along with Val. All right. Any questions or announcements out there?
No,
I think I have Vince.
Not for me, Val. Can just go ahead and get started.
All right. This is for you.
Clip me some. Are we keeping the lights on or turning them off? Okay. All right, how do I sound? Yeah, better than Bob. Okay. Okay, so now you have to give me a little grace because this is my first time doing any presentation here in the hybrid thing. And so I have to get used to not just looking at all the people here, but come back and forth. So and get used to now whatever we just did to make this work. So I need a lot of grace here. So hello everyone, really quick, you didn't do much of an intro. I know a lot of you know. Oh, that was Jay's job. Did Jay do it? No. Okay, I'll do my own intro just really quick. So I'm Reading-based photographer. I lead photography workshops to all kinds of fun and exciting places, do private lessons. Like my job is photography education, which I absolutely love. And one of the things that I do love a lot is photographing holiday lights. So I'm really excited to be bringing this presentation. but there'll be some information, contact information and everything at the end here. So getting started, and let me know if I'm not loud enough or looking, but I just want to go through a couple things. So first, the goal of the presentation, yeah, is everybody seeing it full and everything?
We haven't shared yet.
Okay, well, you could share that image and we could start on
Let me
that.
share.
Yeah, I was gonna run this through my laptop and then I thought we were gonna run it through the computer here, and now we're just kind of improvising, so
Can they see this?
now are they seeing the bottom images too, or are they getting it full frame?
They're seeing what you're seeing up there.
Okay, they have it full frame?
Yep.
Hang on, we're working on that.
Jay, can you see our screen?
I can see your screen and I will say this, you sound a little better, clearer than Val does on my end anyhow.
How's this? Is that any better?
Yes,
All right,
That's real
I
fast.
think.
So they
is that full screen for you guys?
I think they're seeing what you're seeing, Bill.
All right,
I-
well,
I see the panorama of the farm or Cozier's Village. Is
but
that
you
it?
see all the thumbnails underneath as well, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so there's not. All right, then I guess it is what it is. All right, so a couple things first. The goal of the presentation is to just help you overcome the challenges of photographing holiday lights and any other displays like this at night, which there are actually many. I want to give you some technical details on how to, best start. Well, first, I don't know.
You're muted now, Val. Bob, you might want to give Val your microphone. It sounded a little bit clearer with your microphone. I don't know why. Okay.
All right. All right, let's just try it again and see how long it lasts. So I'm gonna get into this pretty quick again. I just want to be able to help you guys to overcome the challenges of shooting holiday lights at night. Make sure you have that. So obviously, when you're in the dark, there's a problem. Your camera doesn't want to focus right. Your exposure doesn't, your camera doesn't move right. So we're going to talk about some of those things. All right, so we are shared correct, right? So one of my first tips, and I think this is really important, is that you should arrive at your location early if you can. And if at all you can be there before sunset, that would be fantastic. So I love to be on location before sunset. You can see here, doesn't look great here, but hopefully it looks good for you guys. But this picture of the Christmas village, I'm going to start out with that, and that's where we're going on Thursday if you've never been. So I was there in this location before sunset, as you can see, and then just getting the sunset and the lovely colors behind the image, I think really makes it better. So let's make sure this will work. Okay, why didn't we change? Going? Okay, so here's going to be a couple more at sunset here along the gardens. Yeah, it'll probably look better. And then this was a year or two ago. I was leading a workshop. And while we were inside photographing during, right as the sun had set, we looked out the windows and the windows were just glowing this amazing pink and magenta. And so we all just raced around trying to get any kind of composition that we could with the sun and the sunset in the windows. So definitely you want to try and do that. Here, this is just in minutes. And, it's not a great shot, but this is where I was standing when the sun started to explode. And so just ran around trying to find something to put in there. And so they had the old Robert Chocolate Factory, kind of got that and all lit up, and then the wedding train there. Okay, so Bob is mixing the folders back and forth. So after sunset, then you have my next most favorite time that I would absolutely want to be out shooting, and that's blue hour, which is kind of, what we call dusk. Okay, and that's after the sun has set, but there's still some light in the sky. It's not total darkness yet. And you get this beautiful blue in the sky. Even on an overcast day, you might still get that. And it just really separates out your trees and other things that are not lit. Okay, so let's just go. Yep. So like here's the fountain show, which goes on at Longwood at Christmas time. And again, if we went in blue hour, just everything would just be a black background. So that's really a beautiful time. And your camera probably will still meter okay for this. So if you're in aperture priority, shutter priority, whatever, you'll probably still be able to get a half decent exposure. Like all kinds of banging here. Again, blue hour, lovely separation. Most places turn on lights right by sunset time. And then again, Christmas Village, and it's just really kind of stunning during blue hour, which unfortunately Thursday, they only open after the sun is set. So a couple hopefully to entice you about there. And then the last couple of ones, as it's getting darker and darker, you see the blue sky is getting a little bit darker. You can switch, but so that is what I would recommend. Absolutely, be there early. First big tip, and definitely to photograph during blue hour. Now let's talk about composition, because composition still counts whether you're just shooting holiday lights or no matter what. And one of the things that I like to do is to kind of frame the subject. So here I'm leaning against a tree that's made out of those heart-shaped flowers, and then just photographing the tree in the background. And hopefully they look good in the they're pretty light here, but so if you can have anything that you can use to kind of frame your subject, that'll look much nicer. Here's one and these, because of all our shuffling, these are a little out of order from the way I was doing it, but say you can't get everything in the scene with your single composition, you could also try a panorama, which is what that first shot was, and then this one in New York City. So this was, I believe, 7 vertical images that were then stitched together. But one of the things, kind of going backwards, let me start with this one. So this is where Radio City Music Hall is in the background there, so right in front of there. One of the next tips that I think, for your composition is fill your frame with lights, as much light as you can get in there. And I kind of like this composition, but I still had a lot kind of on the bottom left that was, kind of a little, not as much lights. And then going, this way, I just moved myself around the fountain a little bit and was able to kind of fill the frame a little bit more. This one, so this is, I don't know if anybody's ever been to, what do they call it, Christmas on the Mountain up near Reading High. And this is kind of right when you go in, at least this was a couple of years ago. I don't know what it's like this year. But again, just fill your frame with the lights, because that's what it should be all about, the color. So here's an image where you still, it's okay, but you see how you have that big dark spot of the grass and then that little bit of dark on the right side. So, we want to look, can we do better? Maybe if this switch. So in this case, I just filled the frame with lights. And there's a bunch more examples for you. And obviously, composition-wise, shoot vertically, shoot horizontal. Even if you think it would only be, look good one way or the other. If you have lighted trees, as obviously they have at Longwood, get right underneath them and look up, photograph that way. And we'll talk about exposure in a minute. And you guys could type in, Joe, they can type in some questions if they have them online. You feel free to monitor that. But, store windows are a really thing to find as a subject. This is in Peddler's Village. And, got this one shot, there's the moon. I guess that would be the moonrise in the background there. So I thought that was pretty neat to include it. But then I moved over and just filled the frame again with the window. And you want to make sure that you're absolutely getting a good exposure, that you don't have anything blown out or too dark. There's another one from Cozier's Christmas Village. Again, just find a bunch of lights and just fill it in there close. If you can see sort of in the center, so I don't have a way to point for you guys, but there was something that was moving. We're going to talk about shutter speed in a little bit, but that's like this little Ferris wheel that little animals are on that can be pretty neat if you find motion. You want to include that. Again, if you had stood back, it might not have looked as impactful, but find a bunch of trees. There were a lot more, but I just found a bunch that were close together and filled the frame with that. For if anybody's going to ask that, for 99% of my images, I'm on a tripod. So if there are any that are inside long, which I don't even know if I included many, I probably didn't use one there because it's not really functional at Christmas. You're not allowed, but 99% of the time I am on a tripod so that I can play around, because I'll show you some of the other creative things I like to do. So in this case, I like to frame. We talked about that a second ago. So I found it was a very foggy night, which was neat. And there was this tree that I came right up against, and I used that to frame the tree in the background. And then just tried a couple different compositions. And it's usually not your first one that you're going to be the most happy with, so you can play around with a couple different things. Christmas carols in the background here.
I hear you.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Jay, we good? I'm just going to keep going until somebody panics. So here's another one in the framing where I just used the 2 trees, just moved in close, and then you have the nice whatever display over the doorway as well. And then, for you guys here, what is this image all about? Like, what do you think was the draw shooting it this way? The reflections. So I absolutely love the reflections. And then don't just stop there. So I did verticals, horizontals, but don't just stop there. What about an abstract of just your reflections? And if you look close, it started to rain on me on the backside of the lake. So then I got some neat kind of water drops in there just on the reflections. Again, just filling the frame. And then I don't know, a couple of years ago, along with this was my absolute favorite Christmas display. And it just seemed like a horizontal image, but turning it vertical, it was pretty, it was stunning either way. And they can look, completely different. You get two very different images just by going vertical and horizontal. But if you notice, I could have gone wider, but I'm trying to keep it just in on the display and not, where the people are walking around and everything else to get them in. All right, Bob, switch me up. Have to cue the helper here. All right, so that was some tips about composition. Let's talk about shutter speed now. One of the most important things you want to start with is if there's any wind, you want to be very careful because normally our shutter speeds are a little slower, in low light. But if it's really windy, all those little strands and strings of light are just going to blow and going to be rendered as a blur. So you'll want to pay attention to that in your images and choose a faster shutter speed. You might have to force your ISO up, a variety of different things. In this case, a long shutter speed, if you've ever tried to go to this tunnel at Longwood Gardens, there's a never-ending stream of people, like thousands. If you want that without people, you're never going to get it. But if you're on a tripod, you're off to the side, and you use maybe a 10-second, 5-second exposure. As people keep walking, they're going to disappear. So if you look right in the middle, you see the sort of black, sort of ghosty, that's some people that maybe stopped for a split second during my exposure and did their selfie and then moved on. So one of the things you can do if you are using your tripod is then, drag out a really long exposure and hopefully people will just keep walking and totally disappear. What's that? No? For this shot, I was on a tripod. It was earlier in the day, and I did not notice at all that tree was moving. But I had a slow shutter speed. It was maybe half a second, and I'm like, "Wait a minute, that's all blurred." And then I realized. So then I took like a 4-second exposure so that I could get that whole spinning motion. So if something's moving in the scene, then you're probably not counting blurring, blurring lights. But if there's something moving, also like in this, this is the train display, then use a slower shutter speed so that you can show the motion. So can you guys see it here, the train in motion? And then back to that little spinny thing. So a longer exposure allows that to, record as a nice circle. And then a train. And when you go to any display, try different angles and everything. So this is one of the things that hopefully it's still there at Christmas Village and we're going to play with. It's just lights that look like a tree, but it does spin. And so if we're set up there with our tripod and do a little bit longer exposure, we start to record that motion. It's not very fast. It looks it though, doesn't it? So here's another view of it when you walk around the corner and you have the house in the background. So I really liked that, with all the lights as well. Now, on this one, if you look very close at the floating tree on the left, you'll notice that it's blurred. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. It was a very windy night that night, and the trees were floating. And so I'm doing a 5-10 second exposure as it got darker, and the trees were rendered as a blurry mess. So you really have to keep an eye on that. Unless you want a blurry mess. Here's, for the last bunch of years, a couple of us have gone to Hershey Park and photographed the holiday lights there. So there are a bunch of rides that are open. For the life of me, I can't see why you want to be flying through 20 degrees. But this sort of swing makes for a great photograph, and we'll just set up a tripod here and go for a couple seconds and get the motion as that moves, which can be really fun. Here's another example on a wind. You saw that other picture and you saw the beautiful reflections. Well, they really started picking up, and now look, the reflections are totally gone. The trees are kind of moving back and forth a little. And honestly, if I have the choice of what day to go out, I will not go out on a day that has maybe more than 5 mile an hour winds, because it's just all your shots are going to be blurry. You can run a tripod, but if they're blowing in the wind, it'll never work. So, and there you have nice without the blur. Oh, that's it. Switch me up. So the shutter speed, I don't know if anybody's asking, the shutter speed just that you want to use just depends on the motion, depends on how fast things are going. And you just want to play. You could try shutter quality, but you're probably going to be in front of when it's totally dark. And just start at maybe a half a second. You can go slower and slower. A lot of my images might even be 10 seconds to give time for them to play. All right, let's talk about aperture now. 90% maybe of my images are shot wide open. And then the lens choice that I use depends on what I want the background to look like. So in this case, wide open, I'm very close to the flowers, and there's actually a cookie under there on a plate. So those are focused, and so all the lights and everything will go very soft in the background. A great lens to use for holiday lights would be the Nifty 50. If you have a 50mm lens, that goes down to like 1.8, maybe 1.4. Another good lens would be if you have a macro, because most of those go pretty fast, or any 2.8 lens can give you some pretty neat effects. So I personally love the bokeh background and the soft background in there. Here's an example. Again, if you get, so the closer you get also to your subject, so wide aperture, and then physically closer to your subject, that and the further than the background might be away, that's how you get the greater, blur in the background or the bokeh lights. So here I just was leaning in close on the lights at Cozies, and just focused on that lighter one, the right one, and everything else just went out. And so that's, it makes people kind of stop when you're doing image like that, because that's different than what your eye sees. And so that's a neat way to create light. So when we did our workshop, I was trying to show everybody how this is great for portraits. So again, we got close to our subject, and the lights were, 20 yards away maybe. And we used a little full flash, which again, it looks really bright here, but hopefully it's better for the home viewers. But then you get that really nice background. So that'd be a neat way to do some family photos. Same thing. Get really close.
What's your aperture?
So this was with the Nifty 50, and it was 1.8. And I'm as physically close to that light bulb as I can be. That really is, it's about 3 inches long. It's not your little typical one for a tree, but then you get that kind of neat background. And this was just another really neat display a couple of years ago at Longwood, maybe it was last year, where I'm really close to the hanging candles, focusing on them, and then all the Christmas tree lights that are in the background just give that really nice soft little, I'll call them glow balls. This is one of those just private home displays over in Wyatt Missing. That's pretty neat. It's time to the radio. Cars drive by, I got out and stood and shot for a while. But just, softening that in the background, it keeps your eyes right on the subject, which for me was the little soldiers. But you can get creative. So I went down the line and focused on that first soldier. Again, wide open, 50mm on that 1.8, and notice how they all just then get softer as you go down. And these are out of order. Here's another one portrait that someone else did. You can switch it up. So again, when we're switching that up, just aperture, I think, is one of the biggest things that can really affect your images and help you have a more creative shot. Now, a lot of these are with more, it's still the same shallow depth of field, but these are where I really accentuated the bokeh, the background, really worked on that. So by using more of a magnification, like a longer focal length lens, so if you have a 70-200 lens, I use Olympus now, so the 40-150 is equivalent to like an 80-300. You shoot that at 2.8, and you're really going to get some pretty neat, like larger lights in the background. And these are available. Pointing out that you can get these little kits, or you can make your own cutouts with different shapes, whether it be a heart or this little smiley face or whatever. And you can cut them out of black paper and then just tape them or rubber band them to the front of your lens. And it's just, a little cutout that you'll do in the middle. And all your lights in the background will be whatever the shapes are that you cut out. I'm jumping, we'll see a couple of them here, but in this case, I used one that had stars, and so you see those little lights are no longer round; they're stars, or star-shaped. That can get a pretty neat effect. So you can, So you can just go on YouTube and search for create your own bokeh cutouts, and there'll be a bunch of videos and show you how to do it and how to measure. Well, it's a little cutout that goes over the lens, and so you're actually only shooting. I have them when we turn the lights on. I'll show them, and maybe you'll be able to see my hand too if I hold it up. But so the lens is covered completely with black, except for a cutout that is that star. And so I'm shooting through that, and that gives you that effect. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. We'll see it when I turn the lights on, and you'll see what they look like. There's a bunch of different ones. But this is one of my favorite shots. I set up a candle in the living room. This Christmas tree that was about 7 feet away. I did use the 70-200. Nobody used to use the 70-200 in the living room, but I used that because I knew that the greater focal length would give you those larger light balls in the background. And once you're in there, you just kind of move around until you see those lights looking the way you like pleasing in the background. You can also just take a picture where you turn your lens completely out of focus at the widest aperture, and you can create your own just light blows that you could then, if you're good at Photoshop, maybe use as your own background for something else or a texture. So you can play around. Probably have a couple of examples of those, but it's really neat to do, with ornaments. And this was just one of these like kids spinning top at Hershey Park that I got the guy to hold, and he was spinning it, and we just kind of moved around until there were lights behind there. It's just a really cool effect. This was just, I'm pretty sure they were just fake grass sort of things that were in an urn outside at Longwood Gardens, and I just moved really close to them, focused on the red branches, and then all the lights that were going down the walk there just became these beautiful, colorful background. Yes. Black area might be people. Can you picture a time without people? So here's a couple examples, trying to see where we are, with different focal lengths. So just watch. So each time I'm close to the flower, I'm completely focused on the flower. I made sure that I have one of the Christmas trees in the background. And this is even, greater magnification. You see how we get the bigger lights in the back. A little bit smaller. And then some of the lights in the back might not be completely round. That's kind of dependent on your lens and your aperture blades. Good. We hope that Jay and the gang are still there. All right, so let's talk about some creative things. So one of the things that I always carry with me is a star filter or a cross screen. And that's just a clear filter that has an etching on it that will either have 4 points, maybe 6 points, or 8 points. You can get 3 different kinds. I believe this is 4, and you just kind of get that cross look in there. So they can add some really nice touches to holiday lights. And you see on the tree, and it'll put that star on any small light source in the frame, so you can also see it up in the ceiling lights as well. But if you like to make your own holiday cards and anything, that just can look beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so those are just some examples. And all of these close-up ones were probably handheld. You just have to watch your exposure. And then for this one, I found when they did through old camera gear, like from back in the film days, a filter that was called a 5-section, and the center was sharp, and then it gave you all the same. It was etched in a way that you had a smaller version of whatever was in the center on the side, and you could spin it. And so I thought, well, let's see what I can do with that. So then took that to the Christmas Village and put it on, and just started played around with that. Yeah, it's just very different. And some of you really good Photoshop geniuses probably could do that, but didn't take me any time with the filter on. Even this little, the snowman is kind of neat. And in the last couple of years, I've picked up a different filter. It's called a prismatic filter, I believe. And it's kind of similar in that your center is kind of clear, and then the rest has all these little kind of images, duplicate images of it that you can also spin, and it can create some pretty neat effects. Like with the starburst. So this one is a 6 or 8 point, 6 point. And you also get the effect a little bit on the candles. This is kind of like, that's what the prism filter looks like. And I just turned it out of focus so you can get those, just see the lights. And if anybody's interested, I can, we could put in the chat. I assume I'll end up with the chat, and I could send, links to some of these things. So when I get bored with just taking regular lights, then I really like to play. So first I might start with the filter and see if I can do some creative stuff. But then I turn to ICM, which is intentional camera movement. And that's my absolute favorite way to shoot. And that involves maybe zooming. So zooming in, zooming out, zooming in and out during the exposure. In some cases, it might be turning the lens out of focus during the exposure. If you're really coordinated, you might try to turn the lens out of focus while you're also zooming. You can try that. So it's just a matter of having a play and just see what you can come up with. So here I was holding the zoom lens and kind of spinning, and I was probably holding the focus too and having both of those move at the same time. Let me go to this one first. So for one of the things I did is there's a tree of lights that we were standing underneath, and had the tripod directly underneath, had the camera laying flat on its back. I loosened the tripod head and then gave it like a second exposure. And then during the exposure, all I did was spun the camera. And it didn't have to be really fast, and it just made it all the way around in that second. So this is what the actual scene was, and that's the image that I got from doing that. Yeah, it does look like star trails, although that's where Martians or something. But it can really neat. Again, just if you were hand holding, and I'll have an example of that, it would be smooth. So again, all I did was pointing straight up on the tripod and spun it in a circle during the exposure. And then you can also have fun by, set the camera on the tripod, but I kind of tap the camera on the side as I'm shooting, so it gets that little squiggle. and one of my zooms. Now, usually I just kind of, once the exposure starts, I'll just zoom in or out. But in this case, I had a longer exposure, and when I tripped the shutter, I let the image expose for a split second and then zoomed it. And that's why you can kind of see the tree, and it's not just all blurry lines. So you can play with a whole variety of things. And this, it's not like a fantastic image, but you've got kind of this is a double exposure. So the first shot is taken with the lens all the way out of focus. Now, this is if you have multiple exposure option in your camera. If not, you would have to combine the images like in Photoshop. But first image was aperture wide open and completely out of focus. And then the second image was stop down mode but out of focus, and combining them together. This was the one that was, stopped down a little more. And then this is the final shot. And it gives kind of just like a glow in the lights. So you might want to check if your camera does have double exposure, and you could figure out how to do that and try playing with a variety of different things. This image also is a combination of double exposure with images, out of focus and in focus. Same with this one. This one is just turning the camera, I believe, from out of focus to in focus during the exposure, but I would try it both ways. And the thing is, you never remember because you're trying so many things. It's like, oh, how do I do it? How did I do that? And then this is when, again, you're just kind of zooming. And sometimes like this, I don't have a slice idea what I did. I just don't know. But that can be pretty fun. So try intentional camera movement if you've never done that. Swirling, moving, spinning. Go ahead, Bob.
What was that last one?
This one?
Last one.
Before?
Oh, repeat the question.
Zooming.
This one?
Yes, what was the image?
So it's just holiday light. So I can't really make out. It's probably still kind of like this fence. This fence was full of lights, and then there were some other decorations in the background, and it was just zooming in during that. Really, you just want to fill your frame with lights, so you could be focused on a Christmas tree or a bunch of other lights. You want to be so you don't have a lot of dark space. You just want to fill it all with lights and just zoom. And you don't even have to zoom all the way in and out, depending on what lens you have. You can just zoom it a little bit. Just play around. Just can hear all that screaming. Oh, yeah, okay. So here's another tip or creative thing I like to do, which is called a shoot through. And it's where you find lights that are right, close to the frame that you can get your camera really close to, and then be shooting through to something in the background. And you want to be using a really wide aperture. And so any lights that are not in focus will go, to those bigger focal balls. So here's a shoot through with a star filter in it. And here I do have kind of everything in focus, but it has a lot of these trees made out of light. So I'm right against a tree, shooting through to another tree and another tree, and it just gives a really neat effect. And this one is just kind of, let me skip that one. But here's another example. The lights are very close, maybe even right up against the lens or an inch or two away, and they're just out of focus. And I'm focusing on that tree in the background. And it looks like, you just have these floating orbs. The same with this one. And it takes a little practice, but it's can do some pretty neat results. I think we have one more set. All right, and then the last thing I would say is get out in inclement weather. Get out when you feel like just crawling under a blanket with your hot chocolate and your Hallmark movie, and just make yourself go out. So fog, There's gonna be some different examples. This is actually on a really cold day. It's cold outside and I'm inside and there's this condensation in the window. So you just move in until you find some nice color and lights outside and shoot. If you look in the background of this, it's just a really foggy, misty day, so everything kind of has this nice glow. My favorite, I mean, it's miserable to be out in the rain, but if I could be alone, I would do it every time. Not a torture down there, but just look at the reflections. Like, that's just magical, and that's a different image than you see of the other 100,000 that are going to be posted this month. Just playing around with different compositions, but now trying to leave a lot of space for those reflections. I think it's just damp, so you can see the walkway, which, you know, this is rose. This is not even there. You can get up in the front of the conservatory at Long, but just see the reflection from the lights. And then this was last year, we hid for a little bit when it was pouring, and it slowed down, and just all those puddles and things. So we're going, a couple of us are going tomorrow, so we can maybe and try and just splash some of it as I go. Yeah, I'm on a tripod, people are hiding inside. But I'm also doing a long exposure. So if anybody walked through, they've disappeared. So that lady with the umbrellas that was standing there, and she recorded. So another benefit for carrying your tripod. But I'm telling you, if you're when you step inside of those doors, you will be abducted by somebody that'll start yelling about your tripod. So put it away. But here's another new one where I was taking this row, looking down the pathway, all the reflections from the different light, and the people, you know, didn't exposure. I wanted to kind of record them as a soft blur. I think people give up at this point. This was probably 10 minutes before close, and so it was empty. But anytime we can get preferably if it rained and then it stops, so we aren't getting drenched. But that would be a great time to get out. And that would be the end. So I'll have this up for a second if anybody would like to. I would love to stay in touch with you guys. Anybody that's not already following, I post pretty regularly on Facebook. I try to post every day except for weekends on Instagram. My website is there. I do lead workshops. We have one coming up if anybody's interested in joining me. I'm leading a group 2 Monroe Gardens on December 19th. That's a Tuesday because you couldn't pay me enough to go there on a weekend. So hopefully that would be a little less work and everybody during the holidays. Yeah, good question. So if you can, if you work, take some time off and come during a weekday, that would be, you can feel free to join me. So were there any questions, Jay? Should I stop sharing? Wherever that is, you're gonna.
Val, what kind of tripod are you using? And also, are you using live composite? Maybe you touched on that, but I may have missed it.
Stop share, but nothing came up. I've used these images from a ton of different rules, and I've used a bunch of different tripods. I would carry the lightest at this point that I can. I have a travel tripod, a Sue or a Benio, or Sue with a Benio head. Just a really light one, because I'm going to be carrying that around while I'm inside, and have to schlep it, so, it doesn't need to be heavy, but that's up to whatever your preference is.
Okay.
You do need one, though. I mean, you're not going to have completely blurry images unless you have one. Or you're going to have to use such a horribly high ISO that they're not going to look good. So. Well, I would start at 200 ISO if I can. And if I don't, you might end up at least 10-second exposures at that point. But if that's, I don't really mind that unless I'm getting poured on. Because that'll allow people to walk through, because there's always people at these things unless you're able to be out around my age. I'm too old for that anymore. But yeah, so I would start at 200. I probably end up shooting mostly at 400 ISO. But the only time I crank my ISO up is if I'm inside, like say in the conservatory at Longwood, and you have to handhold. And then you have a variety of other ways to steady myself. I might sit on the floor and just shoot and prop up my elbows and that. But I would try and you absolutely don't want to be an auto ISO. Absolutely not. If you normally shoot that way, you want to get out of there because your camera doesn't know that you're on a tripod, and it will be hitting you at the max ISO that your camera can do, which might be 64,000, 6,400, depends on how new your camera is. But you don't want to be in auto ISO. The only thing that I would leave potentially in auto would be you probably could use auto white balance because most of the holiday lights are daylight balance. You can either go in daylight or maybe auto. So try either one of those. We talked about the aperture and then we mostly shoot wide open, which would let me have a faster shutter speed. I do shoot anything wrong, because it is tricky with lighting that, and that gives you more leeway and better quality image to process. Every single one of my images, I do some editing in Lightroom. I don't use Photoshop at all. There are people on here that know that I'm, as dumb as a box of rocks, straight kid, when it comes to Photoshop. So everything is just edited in Lightroom, and all single exposures too. Some of the ones may be inside the conservatory, I might bracket and merge those, but just the other thing that you want to watch with your exposure, in manual, you want to keep an eye on the histogram all the time. Your lights, if they're colored, should be colored. You should be able to see that they shouldn't be blown out white. So you want to make sure that you just have to shoot maybe at a faster shutter speed until you see the detail on those.
How you mentioned earlier about focusing. How do you handle that?
Well, I focus, so I never have the camera in the auto zone where it chooses where it wants to focus. I would try auto focus, which should be kind of easy if you go to any of those pictures where the lights are close or whatever. But every single time that I shoot, I'm moving. There's a little toggle on the back of my camera that I can move my focus point, and I'm moving that onto the area that I want sharp. So in some of those images where I was shooting through, maybe I don't know if I should put it back, where I'm shooting through and I want the ones in the very foreground to be out of focus, then I'm putting my focus point on the tree in the back. And otherwise, your camera normally will try and grab the image or focus on whatever's closest or biggest in the camera. So, something like this, I did stop down, I was at 99% might be, wide aperture, but I probably shot at 5, 6, or 8, so there'd be a little bit more.
Zoom.
What?
You're not sharing, so Zoom people don't see what you're doing.
Oh, I thought we switched back to sharing.
You can.
All right, well, let's do it quick.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're going to put that back up for you just for an example, because that was a good question. Sylvia asked, where do I focus? And so let's use this one. Okay, we're not moving there, Mr. Bob.
Reynolds, you're over here. Easy.
Yeah, I was doing it. It's not moving. Hang on, we'll be right back. Okay, so well, that's not the one we clicked on. This one, the one that's highlighted here. Okay, that one, perfect. So in this case, I made sure to focus on that green tree in the background.
And there was enough light, because you were talking about Thursday night at 6 o'clock, it's gonna be black.
Well, in this case, I was doing blue hour, so there's not even that, but it doesn't matter. I'm still gonna focus on that tree that I want. It's just my background will just be different. Yeah, if you're in total darkness, 90% of your shots are gonna be in total darkness because blue hour goes so fast. So I don't not go out, but if I can get there early enough, then I will. If anybody goes on my Facebook page, I just posted some things from Joanna Furnace, and we made there to be there before the hour, and we were shooting as it got dark, and there was a beautiful balance between the sky and the lights and everything that time. So you like your images better that way, but obviously you have to shoot in the dark, and you saw a lot of images that were in the dark, complete darkness.
That's what you saw. That's how it saw all those colors and everything.
That's what she asked if that's what I saw. And yeah, so looking through the viewfinder, I'm seeing it just like that.
You can take all these techniques to city nightscapes too. It's not just
Anytime you're shooting at night, you could, like for cityscapes, like Bob just said, absolutely like that. You probably don't have lights to shoot through like this. But yeah, 3 hours absolutely the best time to shoot any buildings or anything lit at night, because it just gives you that nice effect. And it's easier to kind of see and focus as well. Any other questions? It is fog. Yeah, if I can choose, now it's really hard. Say, for example, with Longwood, because you have to get time tickets, they sell out, so you kind of have to just pick a date and go, and you don't really know what the weather is going to be. But if I could pick a day that was going to be foggy, misty, rainy, snow, we were there one time in a foot of snow, they don't close. So, yeah, that would be neater atmospheric, because the fog and the mist just kind of give a nice glow.
Names for your pictures?
If you look on Instagram, I usually try and title everything on there, and that does now get shared over to Facebook. However, that magical thing just happened again. So yeah, I don't give a title to every image. I'll title ones when I share on Instagram sometimes, or if I'm going to enter a contest or something, then they want a title. But other than that, what would I call that? I don't know. What would you guys call that? True is a suggestion, but then you don't have any, taking into account all the other pretty lights. So that is exactly what I told him just 2 years ago on Instagram. Look it up.
I am on there.
One of my images where I think I zoomed, I'd have to double check. I called it Lights Alive because it looked like, I don't think I'm the most creative titler, so I'd rather not give them to things, but people are always welcome to say, oh, you should call this whatever.
It's Alive is the one with the tree.
Well, I want to show that. So the one where I saw a little bit of the tree outline, and yeah. So try.
You shoot too much, you don't name everything.
No, that's what I said. I don't. I just anxiety come up with a name. Like, I would probably not give them a gallery show because it would just kill me to come up with a name. In fact, kind of along the same line, some of you know that I do a calendar every year, a fine art calendar, and I put scripture verses with that. And I'm trying to come up with the verses that I don't just grab a verse, like something that sort of matches in my mind for that. And it just takes a lot of time. And trying to narrow down, I need a calendar that can hold 1,000 images because I try to get out a lot. Good. You have a question? Yeah.
Do you do Christmas cards?
I don't at the moment. Calendars are what I do at this point, and I have some. That sounded a little paid for. But yeah, we have some here if anyone's interested in supporting the business or supporting the comedy act for tonight or whatever. But I am hoping that maybe by next year, well, very shortly, I'll have online galleries that people can order images, and we'd like to add some cards as well. Oh, she loves this one. All right, thank you.
Oh,
Can you get your name? What size would you like? No, but I think that's fun. And to create your own, holiday cards, that's neat. And to do something that's different from everybody else is, kind of neat. So, while you're looking at that, make sure you're paying attention here. Hopefully you can hear me. we didn't even talk about gear much, but so let me hit it real quick. It doesn't matter what gear you have. Okay, you can shoot with any gear. You should have a tripod. You can go out and try your longer exposures without a tripod, and you'll see why pretty quickly that you need a tripod. If you're on a tripod, having a cable release would be better. Okay, so that you're not pressing the camera, especially for these longer exposures, but you can just trigger that with your cable release or your infrared release, or save money and use a 2-second self timer. But if you're trying to dodge in and out of people with 2-second delay, it'll probably be a little problem for you. I always use a lens hood that helps to eliminate lens flare from any lights that I'm under. That also is a huge help if it is misting or raining or snowing, to keep some of that smudge off the lens. I carry as many extra batteries as I have. I keep them all in an inside jacket pocket so that they stay warm the whole time, because batteries lose their power in the cold. Once they warm up, like you go in and have hot chocolate somewhere, you may get some power back to the battery that seemed dead. But like right now, so I'm going around with tomorrow and I have 5 batteries packed. I also have a USB charger and a USB port so that I could be charging as I go, eating my macaroni and cheese and or whatever. I always carry a flashlight or a headlamp so that I can see, a nice little red flashlight would be great, so you can see the settings on your camera, because most of us are not really good about being able to change things in the dark. So that's another one of your challenges. So make sure you have some little light. And we all know that I forget about it, but there's a flashlight on your cell phone. So a lot of cell phones have that. You could use that. Your lens choice depends on what you want to do. So Deb, if she's still on there, she's texting me, what are you taking? I'm taking a bunch of lenses. I'm taking like a 70 to 300 2.8, which would be the equivalent in Olympus. My 4150 is what it is. I have a Nifty 50 that's a 1.8 that's going in various zoom lenses. So you don't want to overkill stuff, especially if it's going to be bad weather, but you want to make sure that you have variety of lenses.
What's your wide?
I have a 6mm now, which would be equivalent to 12mm on a full frame. And I always have that so I can get up under the trees or do something neat. Yeah, and just for the inside things, if I want to get poinsettias with my trees or whatever. So I carry a variety of lenses. Star filter, so I have one of those packed. I'll get out in a second when I set the microphone down. Actually, Bob, slide. Hang on. All right. Can you guys see me? Am I visible? I'm sure. All right, so we're going to unshare. I'm going to show you if you can see this. All right, so here's. So this is one of the purchased cutouts, and so this the black bigger thing here that you see would fit on the lens. You can get different filters that would adapt it or tape it or whatever, and then this is your cutout. Okay, so this one's like snowflakes, and this particular kit came with the little case, and there's hearts and stars and frogs and whatever. Well, no balloons, but you can make your own. And then back in the day, before I was high tech, this was something that a friend gave me, but this is what you could do. You need a circle, a black circle as big as your lens. Okay. And then, so this I would rubber band over the lens, but you could tape it or whatever. And then you can just pop your cutouts in and out, whatever one you want to choose, but you're shooting directly through just that star in answer to your question. And that gives you that neat background lights. So you can look them up and buy one if you're not an arts and crafts person, or like Kim could have all her kids make her a different thing or something. So, yeah. Other questions? Jay? Anyone?
I don't,
Yes.
no
Oh,
questions on this
no.
end.
All right.
How do you deal with the temperature changes from indoor to outdoor?
That's a great question. So talking about weather, you want to obviously protect your room in the rain. Let's start with that. So my gear, I can be, it is weather sealed. I buy a little higher end so that I don't have to worry about that if it gets wet. So the first thing is if you're going out in the rain, You have a plastic bag over it, you can buy camera covers and things. But I carry them in my bag all the time. I also, if I know it's gonna rain, I'm gonna carry a umbrella too, which is a total pain. But it's gonna keep things kind of protected and lots of lens cloths. Now, that is a great question on how do you do with the temperatures, because if you say again, well, an example could also be coziers because they're buildings that you can go in and get hot chocolate and you're outside in the cold. If it's really cold and your camera is really cold, when you go inside to the warmth, your camera, like your glasses, will most likely fog up very quickly. And you will have to wait anywhere from 15 minutes to maybe an hour till you can start shooting. So one of the things that you could do is if you have to be out in a really cold temp, maybe you could throw some lens rollers or something in the camera to maybe help it acclimate. One of the things that we normally do like on a workshop is we'll start outside and it's freezing, we're going to grab a hot chocolate or a snack, and the cameras may start to acclimate that way so that if we go into the conservatory, there might be less time. You can shoot when it's foggy, the sensor, which will give a little foggy effect, but you probably don't want it. So, and then just to continue that tip, when you go home, if you have a freezing cold camera and you're going into your house, it'd be best to just let that camera bag away from heat, warm up on its own. And your camera could still be cold 10 hours later, or maybe not freezing, because it just was out in the cold the other day. Yep, which would help. So this comment was to put the camera in like a Ziploc bag when you come in, and then the bag of moisture will collect on the outside of the bag. I grab, anytime you buy shoes, you get the silica gels, or when you're walking through a store, they're all on the floor, so I snatch them, and I keep a bunch of silica gels also in my camera bag, which maybe would help absorb some moisture because it tends to get wet. And I will constantly be wiping things down.
Don't change your lens.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, I would not change lenses though when I'm out in those kind of elements, because you're just inviting the moisture inside to really, and at that point, that could wreck your sensor.
What do you call that stencil that goes in front of the lens? What do you get? Is there a name for that?
Bokeh kit is what I would call it. If you search for that on Amazon, you should find one.
What do you call it again?
Okay, B-O-K-E-H kit.
Oh, you don't have a lens baby bokeh kit yet.
No. I love the video, and I'm going to take the Soul 22 tomorrow, but I don't know. There's too high.
They just came out with one.
Yeah, no, there's too high a learning. I don't need more stuff. Really need more stuff, but I really don't need more lens baby stuff. I'm pretty good with what I have.
Yeah, if you make your own, just use black hard.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be perfect. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Oh, hang on. This just in. The one that a friend of mine got me for Christmas one year is called Bokeh Masters Kit. DIY photography, and it had a whole bunch of things in there. And then another thing you could do if you want, if you're making some on your own, you're making this, you want it to last. I found some vinyl, you can get them in the dollar store, like just some vinyl covers and things. If you can find black and make your cutout that goes over the lens out of this instead of paper, that'll constantly be getting torn or whatever. So something sturdier, in this case, it's solid.
But
So
doesn't work well with zoom lenses. Works better with primes.
Well, it works best with any 1.8 lens mostly or something, yeah. So maybe for a wider or a 50mm, I mean, it's perfect for a 50. Anything else, Mr. J?
I don't have any questions here. Thank you, Val.
You're welcome. Oh, yes. So let's remember the Thursday night, the photo walk that we have an opportunity to put all of this into practice. I'll be there working with, whatever the group is to help you take great pictures. I'm not there to shoot for myself, but I'll help you get that spinning tree, play zooming and spinning and all that good stuff. So again, that information was in the newsletter that came out today or about the thing tonight. Yeah, so you can just contact me. I believe we have about 4 spots left, so sign up now. But it'll be a ton of fun. And we're meeting, they're open at 6 o'clock, so we're going to meet just before that, go in at 6, and for the afternoon we close.
Any particular spot where you'll be meeting?
Yeah, sure. With the ticket booth. Well, that's all the information that's came out. Yep.
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be a lot of fun. So I hope that we fill it up and, play around. If you've never done all of these things, it's a ton of fun. It really is. And it's one of those when you're doing it, you have no idea. And then I love the workshop is the, when you see it happening, or when the excitement when they see it happen. So the same thing, I do a lot of things, right, Kim, at amusement parks and that. And you set people up and you tell them they're going to exposure, and they don't know what they're going to get because you're not seeing with your eye, right? You're creating that. And so, when you first get that image and you have the swirls of the rides or whatever, like it's really pretty cool. It doesn't get old for me. It's fun. So
She likes to do this.
I do. I love it. I was happy to do this. So Bob, you want to sign out for anything? No, I'm good.
I'm good.
All right, Bob doesn't want to talk to you.
It's the guy in the back.
All right, that's it. I'm gonna set the microphone down.
Okay, so Joe, you can stop the recording.